In this week's episode, we talk about dysfunctional behavior, saying no to things, and finding the knowledge of God. Hey, and welcome to episode 37 of Business Greenhouse TV. Super pumped to be back in the saddle filming the show for you this week. You know, over the next little while, I'm going to be putting out some very exciting news on behalf of the Hone household and Business Greenhouse as a whole. And I won't tell you now, I'm going to just tease you a little bit, but strategically, what the Lord is asking us to do over the next little while is ultimately going to help us change culture and raise up a whole bunch of Christian entrepreneurs. So literally, in the next week or so, we're going to be putting out some content. We'll let you know what's going on, but it's big for us and it's exciting. So watch this space. A couple of weeks ago, in fact, quite a few, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I did a book review. I think it's time I did another one. I'm an avid reader. I want to talk to you this week about this book, Monday Matters, by my good friend Mark Bilton. Many of you would know Mark if you've come to our annual conferences. We've had him speak at the Gold Coast and Sydney, and next year I'm going to rope him into doing a couple more. But he wrote this book, basically, Monday Matters, and it's about understanding that Monday is as important as Sunday in terms of our faith. You know, and it's about finding God in the workplace and our faith being a 7-day event, not 1-day event. And really, it helps us cement the fact that there's no sacred secular divide anymore. In the new covenant, there's no such thing. You know, Jesus did away with all of that. And it's just a really nice reminder. So this book is excellent. Monday Matters, Mark Bilton. We might see if we can hook up his handle here. He runs like a bit of a ministry called Called to Business. And he's got a huge following and just puts out tons and tons of good free content. So good on you, Mark. All right. Let's get into today's show. Paul, what's our first question?
Katie Atkins asks, how do we find staff that we can trust to manage the business if we want a day off? What are some tips to finding people that will stay the mile and catch our vision for the business and be as committed as we are?
Katie Atkins, very good question. Let me just give you a shout out. The Atkins owned the JR Easy Traveller. It's a horse float where they guarantee that as your horses get in and out, they will not scramble. It's got a specific design to it that means that the horses don't scramble as they're climbing in and out, and they're doing great things. And all right, so to answer your question, I want to answer the second bit first. I don't think you can ever expect staff members to catch the vision like the business owner should. That's the reason why the vision was given to the business owner and not the staff member, because it's theirs to carry. I don't think you can ever expect anybody to want the business to grow as much as you do. You know, and that's for all of us. Like the staff, they'll perform to a certain degree, but they're never going to own it because it's not theirs. I think we've got to come to terms with the fact that they're never going to appreciate the business to the same level as we do. And if we try and get them to, we're going to bang our head up against the wall and we're going to be nothing but frustrated. I think we need to accept the fact that they're never going to do that and do our best to bring them as close as we can. And wherever they choose to tap out on the journey is where they're at. So I think we just got to get our head around that. How do you get them to do, the first part of your question was, how do you get them to do when you're not there to put in a solid day's work? So I'm going to answer that a little bit differently. I personally think that if you've got staff that aren't performing when you're not there, you don't have a staff problem or a leadership problem, you have a recruitment problem. So you put the wrong people on the bus. I think you should be able to expect, a solid day's work from people just because you're not there. So I think we have to look at who are we recruiting, who are we letting in, who are we getting on the bus, as Jim Collins would say. And I find that's an easier way to address it, because if we have dysfunctional behavior, the first place to look is the process. What's the process you put people through to put them in the business? I would address that bit first. Now, let's say you got people in the business and they're already on the bus and they're not performing. I think you've just got to get very, very serious about a set of roles, responsibilities, and key performance indicators. You've got to give people tracks to run on. You've got to let them know what is success in their role. Because if they don't know what success looks like, but you've got an idea and they don't, they'll never hit it because they don't actually know exactly what that looks like. So you've got to give them that picture, and you've got to be able to hold them accountable to producing results every day, every hour, every week, every month, okay? And the team culture overlaps all of that. You know, which part of the culture lets them get away with inferior performance? That's the kind of thing you need to be breathing into so that you can elevate it so that it doesn't happen again. So I'd be addressing just those few little areas and looking at it. But ultimately, I'd look at your process. What's the process you put people through to bring them in? Because obviously, when we have dysfunctional people in a company, it's because we didn't vet well enough on the way in. And once they're in, we've got to go through a process and make it very clear what we expect and let them know what success looks like. And they have a far higher chance of achieving it. If they're still dysfunctional after all those things, feel free to manage them out and let them find their new horizon at somebody else's business. Solid question. Paul, what's question number 2?
Wesley Wilson asks, how do you balance the 5 F's better when running a business from home with young children?
Wesley Wilson, running Wilson Planning. Let me give you a shout out. I've never known a town planner who can get DAs through council quite like you down there in Newcastle. You know, he's got an uncanny ability to enroll and enlist the council to get what he wants on behalf of his clients. All right, so the 5 F's that Wesley is referring to here is a teaching that we have where, you know, we basically call success balancing faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun. Faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun. And that's a hard one to balance. You know, in business, you know, you've got 4,000 things to do at any time, and emails and phone calls, and, you know, you've got to be there for the kids and there for the spouse, and, you know, you've got to run the kids over to soccer. Like, there's a lot of demands on us. So how do you do a better job? The only way that I have known how to do this is learn to say no to a lot of things. So, for example, what I do, I mean, there's 1,000 things we can get involved in. You know, as entrepreneurs, we're always being asked to sit on boards, to attend this, to help out at this group, help out at church. And they're all really good things. The problem is, every time you give a little bit to something, you're spreading yourself thinner on the things that matter. So I personally think that the way that you balance those is you work out what's the top values for you. What are the top things that you value as a family or value as a person, and only do those things. The top couple, and say no to the rest. And that's the biggest challenge. Most people are like, yeah, these are my values, but they just say yes to everyone out of some people-pleasing thing or a false belief that you're meant to, I don't know, serve at every opportunity or something. The problem with that is every time you say yes to something, something else suffers. So literally, you just want to be working out what are the values, what are the top 2, 3, maybe 4 values that you're going to hold, and only do those things and say no to everything else. For example, in my life, you know, for me, it's like business. I double down on business. It's time with my wife, Kimberly. It's time with my kids, and that's it. You know, there's no golf. There's no going to the beach. There's no hanging out with bros on the weekend. Nothing. There's none of that. And there's a small amount of training that I do because I have to, not because I like to. And that's it. You know, and so it's when somebody says, do you want to come and do this? Nope. Do you want to come and sit on this board? No. Do you want to come and do this? No. Do you want to serve? No. Do you want to be on the chairs ministry? No. Just because. Every time I say yes to them, one of those 3's got to suffer, and they're my highest priorities. So what I guess all I'm trying to say is stick to a few things and do them really, really well. And before you go and start grabbing at all these other opportunities and then spreading yourself too thin before you're feeling pressure. Because what happens in my case, I used to say yes to everything. I did everything bad. Because there's only a finite amount of capacity that I could attach. So every time I said yes to something thinking it was the right thing to do, I was saying no to something else. And I spread myself so thin, I was doing lots of things at 50%. And people were getting frustrated. I find it much, much easier to pick just a couple, 2, 3, 4 things, double down on those and say no to everything else. That's, I think, how you do it for an entrepreneur. Solid question. Let's go to Word of the Week. Okay, this week, cheeky little proverb right at the start of the book. Proverbs 2:3. So I'll give you a little bit more context than just 2:3, and then we'll go back and pick up just on that bit. All right, it says this: My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding. And if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. I don't know about you. I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more about how God thinks, considering he was genius enough to put this whole thing together. But the bit I want to pick up on is, indeed, if you call out for insight and call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding. When was the last time that you actually cried out for understanding? And I don't mean like in your mind thoughts. And I don't mean cry out like, oh Lord, give me understanding. I mean yearning to know God's ways, like crying out for it, you know, in your own room or in your own prayer room or whatever, in the car. When was the last time you actually cried out for understanding? And I don't mean understanding on a certain topic in this case. I mean crying out for general godly knowledge. General. Just an understanding inside of you that you don't have, that you want to have. I'll take you back about 7 or 8 years. And, you know, I come to Christ 11 years ago. Everything was going swimmingly. And for me, I probably wasn't doing enough of the daily disciplines. And although I didn't lose my faith, I was just a bit crusty and stale. And so I literally teamed up with this other business guy in my area. I would drive to his office and then we'd have prayer together in the morning. And it just became a thing for me that I was crying out, give me understanding, give me understanding, give me understanding, give me wisdom, give me understanding. And literally, without anything else changing, I had a greater understanding. It was almost like by doing that, the Spirit came alive and I understood what the Bible was saying. I was able to download a much, much deeper level of revelation. And of course, the Bible tells you, cry out for understanding, cry out for wisdom. But when was the last time you did it? You know, it's so easy to get caught up in the busyness. And I don't mean like asking for it. It doesn't say ask for it. It says cry out for it. That's picture language. There's a yearning. There is a I must have this. There's almost like a spiritual stubbornness that says I want it. I'm not leaving until I get it. And I think God's really looking for those people that really desire godly wisdom and godly understanding. So here's my challenge. Here's my homework for you from here on in. Will you do it? Will you find the time, create the space, go to the beach, drive in the car, get your own place in your bedroom, whatever it is, and start crying out, yearning for understanding. And watch what happens over the coming weeks and the coming months. You will have a better understanding of the things of the kingdom. And you won't be able to put it on anything. It'll just be because when you're yearning from it from earth, heaven will match that and you'll get a much deeper level of revelation. Solid episode this week. Hey, I'll be giving you some exciting news over the next couple of weeks, so watch this space. I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this show, why don't you subscribe by hitting the subscribe button, and then you'll get all the alerts of the future shows.